Hello.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey guys, good to see you all. Not really.
You guys are looking very dapper tonight.
Yeah. This is the first time we've coordinated our outfits in a while.
I got paid to wear this.
So what's everyone imbibing tonight? Drinking. That's a word for drinking.
I understand what imbibing is. I had a glass of dark chocolate sweetened almond milk. It was pretty good.
Ooh, a chocolate milk boy, huh?
Yeah, well.
A little treat.
A little treat.
Little bedtime treat.
Yeah, that's right. Nice pubes on your head, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I got the $2 cold brew from 2 to 6, and I drank it all. So I emptied it out the ice, and then I made instant coffee in here.
Oh Jesus! You just drank that in it like a couple of hours ago.
And then this is grape noon.
Looks like urine to me, but whatever.
That's
That's
right. It's urine in, and then becomes grape noon on the way out.
I'm having a year-old beer that I got for 50% off the Corson Donk Christmas Ale. Pretty
wow. Good. Is it still pretty malty or fresh?
Yeah, it's good. No problems with it. Just wasn't selling, so they marked it down.
What a cheap bastard. Well, that's great.
I've got just hydrogen dioxide.
That's a disgusting thing.
I'm off that shit.
What's the point?
I'm a bit stuffed up, so no beer tonight.
So where you been, Rene? I think you have some explaining to do as to why you abandoned the team.
Left us.
I was out in the Canadian wilderness trying to find my spirit animal.
Yeah. What did it end up being?
Clearly a moose.
He doesn't know. He just shot it. He shot it.
I shot it and I ate it. Yeah. No, I actually don't have a hunting license, but no, I took the summer off because
you should come to America. Here we have a hunting license, all of us. It's called the Second Amendment.
Ooh.
We're getting spicy tonight.
It's for hunting federal agents.
Sorry, you were saying what?
No, but I am going to go to America fairly soon.
Yeah?
I'm gonna go visit Steve.
Oh, nice.
Ugh.
That's a giant waste of time.
Yeah, it's a huge waste of time. What are you gonna do? Watch me work, and then work out, and then repeat?
Repeat, yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of male nudity. So yeah, it's been a while. What have you guys been up to? It's been like 2 months.
Clearly, I've been into designing shirts.
Yeah, 2 months to design this stupid shirt. God.
Absolutely.
We kept scheduling the podcast, but the shirts weren't ready yet, so we had to keep pushing it back.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's
I wanted to make sure to get these before the trade show, so not only did I have to spend extra money on fast shipping, but I also had to buy a minimum of 4. So I was like, well, if I have to buy a minimum of 4, I'm clearly going to buy 5, because I know 4 other people I could send these to.
Well,
I know all about the rush processing, overnight shipping, deadline stuff. It's like defines my life.
Sorry, I gotta stay muted. It's just like a war zone out here tonight.
Well, New York City. The whole
Whoa.
place is a war zone.
And Steve, your camera is just going absolute goofy tonight. I don't know what the hell is its problem.
I say we all chip in and get Steve a new webcam.
I have the same one you do.
Seriously?
Yeah, this is the one you told me to buy.
Well, I don't know. Well, upgrade your computer. By the way,
nothing's wrong with my camera, by the way.
Yeah, no, this is like a known issue with whatever, NDI or VDI or whatever the hell it's called. Anyway, let's move on to what we're working on, and Steve will just constantly change size, and they'll be all good.
Well, I've been working on a lot of videos 3 of which will air in the next couple of weeks. One of them may or may not have to do with this shirt, and I was dead serious. Every penny made from these is going to charity, and I'm going to say on behalf of Adam and Bob, BFFFE.
What charity is that? Bob's Alcoholics Anonymous fund, or?
Yeah, it's going directly into an offshore account where I'm going to just buy all the beer with it. No, it's I forgot the name of it again, but it's the really great place that works with hospitalized children to make sure that they're entertained and not just staring at empty walls.
That's something I actually like everyone does. Like usually at the end of the year, there's a bunch of those.
To be honest, I don't know what everybody else does. I just know that these were people that I'd seen before. And remember, I used to do like hospital computers and stuff, so I've been in quite a few children's wards of hospitals. So I have, quite the sympathy for all those awesome little bastards stuck in there. I used to like to go and hang out with them.
Did you encounter any Catholic priests?
Oh, Jesus
Never.
Christ, come on. How about any nuns, Bob? Don't hold out on me.
No. But if you want to hear a nun story, Google Joey Diaz's sister Hyacinth. It's the greatest story I've heard in a long time. I'm not going to retell it. I could never do it justice.
So what is your next video that's coming out then?
I can't say, but I think it's going to be up by Monday morning. That's why I've been breaking my balls 13, 14 hours a day, making sure I get all the last little tests done and get everything in. It's going to be a biggie. And then the other one's going to be delayed a little bit because I may or may not have to go get that sledgehammer again to finish it.
All right. Well, then I think I have an idea which one it is.
Yep. You know which one the second one is, that's for sure.
All right. What about you, Voltard? What are you doing in between naps?
We sustained some significant flood damage in the tail end of August, and we've had to gut the entire downstairs in addition to fixing the water problem. So I am pretty much basically everything's been on hold or has been drastically slowed down as a result of this devastation. So I really don't have anything fun to talk about, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say.
Are you going to be starting a GoFundMe for your basement?
I thought about that. Somebody actually encouraged me to start a Patreon for whatever reason.
Yeah, that was me, Dick.
Oh, was that you?
I think you should start a Patreon for all the good reasons, for not for rebuilding your punishment shed.
Well, that would be the only one. The lab is perfectly fine, but that would be the only reason I would start a Patreon is to fund all of my repairs and to just live a life of luxury. So, but no, I've not done that. It's just been very hard, to be perfectly honest with you, and that's what she said. It's been very difficult to juggle that and all the things coming in and out of the house and all of the stuff, all of the property, all of the stuff that has to be moved and unmoved and removed. It's been a nightmare. So it's slowed the store. The store technically has been shut down for the past several weeks, and I'm just now getting that back up today with all new inventory. And I've got a few things that are new that I've designed over a little bit. I'm giving out RAM jobs now.
With free courtesy reach rounds?
My favorite part of this is that is a 100% accurate statement. You, in fact, have just offered me a RAM job right before we went live.
I offered you a RAM job. I offered Rene. I thought Rene was really wanting a RAM job because he's like, I'd like to try that game. I'm like, Rene, do you want a RAM job? He's like, I've got so much going on. I don't want one now. So I'm like, God damn it. But at any rate, that's going to be a wonderful thing. Those certain repro games that you can't at the moment play or replicate on any flash card. Those really sophisticated repros. The RAM job solves a huge problem, and it's very simply done. So that's fun. The VRC6 and the VRC7 interfaces, those are done, which is just one little board. That's if you want to make a copy of Lagrange Point or Esper Dream 2 or a Madara. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, but a lot of those really cool Famicom RPGs. that use VRC6 and VRC7. There's now an interface specifically for that. So that's got to go up, and the RAM job has to go up on the store site. But there's some cool video stuff I'm still doing, and it's going to be coming out here hopefully within the fall time. But otherwise, I mean, I wish I had more fun stuff to talk about. But to be perfectly honest with everybody, I'm kind of burned out right now because this goddamn flood is just taking the fun out of everything.
Was anything
worse
like
than Morgan.
irreparably damaged, or anything that was irreplaceable damaged? I guess.
Not really. Fortunately, not. The groundwater was only about an inch deep, but all the flooring
That's what she
downstairs
said.
was damaged. Yeah. All the flooring was damaged. All of the walls have all been gutted because there's mold that's set in behind all the drywall. It's really it's the most sore, largest inconvenience you could ever think of, having to just deplete everything out of a huge room, including the garage, not just my man chambers, but the garage too, so somebody can come in and literally demo your house. Like they have to dig a ditch that's, I think, it's 1 foot deep, and I think it's 1 foot wide, and it goes along the concrete the entire length of the house. So when water comes through the wall, it'll trickle into this fucking ditch, and it'll be dispersed via gravity discharge outside of my man chamber facility. So it's just, I'm just here for fun.
The
I
worst
did
part
some
about
things
that is you never know on fixes like that if it's like 100%, right? Like.
Oh, it creates so much anxiety. There's so many anxieties at play, Nick.
So like
You
every
just don't-
time it rains from now on, even after the fix, you're just gonna be like.
Well, yeah.
Paranoid.
Well, I mean, my God, I mean, fortunately, the work is guaranteed, and it should be for. I mean, I'm really going to be poor after this. It's like a down payment on a house to fix this problem. I mean, it's terrible. It's
Well, you live in
terrible.
Kentucky, so
Not in
that's
New York
like
City.
$19.99, $25.
You know what, Bob? You're just jealous because the size of my goddamn closet is the size of your godforsaken apartment.
Yes. And
So-
you probably pay less for your mortgage than I did for my parking space when I had to have that. So
Bob,
joke's on me.
I pay less for my mortgage than anyone would ever pay for your life at ransom. So just let's not even get into it. But I did some cool things. I had a really good, people were like, where are your videos at? Why haven't you made any videos? I was working on a really fun video where I was dissecting Eon's Super 64. But unfortunately, the SD memory card somehow fused up and locked out on me, and it's a hardware problem, and I lost 80% of the footage, and the only footage that I have remaining is good footage, but I can't go back and replicate all of that work I did, especially now with having zero time. So that really brought me down. I'm hoping that maybe we can collaborate with somebody or do something sexually, because I have a lot of good video footage of the teardown of that thing, and I think it needs to be discussed. Really, I think it honestly does.
Alex Jones might say that this smells like a conspiracy. Did you get paid off to not make that video and to conveniently lose that SD card?
No.
Do you have the documents?
Let me tell you something, Bob. You were right from the beginning.
Bob, right here. So this circle here is the outer circle of the conspiracy. And then here you got the daytime vampires who are screwing everything up.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you, Zach. Though now that you got to pay for all these repairs, are you going to start doing Game Gear mods?
Game Gear mods, you fucking. You little fucking Moby, I will kill you. No, I can't say that.
I've got a Game Gear TV set here that I bought like 4 years ago, and I've never installed it. And I've got plenty of Game Gears. I mean, you need some cash. It's you know what to do. You know what the right thing to do is.
You will be hunted down, you son of a bitch. No, I'm not going to. I'm not quite ready to resort to that. Although I am going to make a GameCube. In all seriousness, Rene, I am going to make a GameCube repair and video modding video.
No, Game Gear.
GameCube.
No, Game Gear.
You just
You
said
know,
GameCube.
I wish it was a GameCube.
Jesus, Eon really is paying them off. They were talking about money to lose the SD card and subliminally talking about their GameCube stuff.
Oh, God,
Oh.
I wish it was a GameCube.
Are you the new
64.
Rerez now? Are you just gonna hold up stuff and talk about it for money to pay for your shed?
Yeah, Bob, let's not get into that. He made it very clear that he receives no endorsement, nor does he receive any sort of affiliate money for that. So you're being erroneous.
Right, and I weigh 110 pounds.
The tap again?
But
You know
So-
the globalists put fluoride in.
Before I miss the opportunity for a good segue, do you have any insights about the device that, since your video is not going to come out, that you'd like
well,
to share?
I can tell you this. Do you want me to talk about it now, or do we need to finish with the round with everyone going around? Did we get to everybody?
No, we didn't get to anyone.
Nick always skips me anyway, so just keep going with this.
Do you guys want me to talk about this for maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes, cool.
Okay, so
Give
you
some
know,
findings.
You
Okay,
can't contain yourself to 5 minutes.
I'll do my best. If I ramble or go on a tangent, warn me. I like how I'm looking at my wrist here for the watch that doesn't exist. Like, yeah, let me time that for 5 minutes. So you know,
time it?
no, God, Jesus, Steve, quit. Fuck.
4.5 minutes left.
So the Super 64, you know, I took it apart and I disassembled it and took it out of its casings, and what I found was both startling and it was truly disappointing. The most glaring thing that I saw right off the bat was the SNES connector that they used. Now, you would think that for $150, Eon could afford to have proper tooling for an actual connector that interfaces properly. But unfortunately, the connector that they used, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture of it, but if you were to go to my Twitter, you could easily find it. They used the same very cheap connector that can be found on eBay that's designed to be a sort of it's the connector that's designed to be used to construct a cable, not to be like attached to a device like the Mark II, the GCHD Mark II, or the Super 64. And what they have to do is, because the connector is not designed for this board that they're interfacing it to, they have to bodge wire it in. The left and right audio channels have to be bodged in.
Because those are on the top row of the pins, right?
Because they're on the top row of the pins, so that you can't interface those without adding a little component legs and bodging them in. And what a lot of people have found is that audio wasn't working. I know this happened to Joe Redifer. Joe had to take his apart because either the left or right audio channel wasn't working, and he took it apart and he saw the terrible bodge work. And he was.
Did they just forget to connect the wire, or was like the solder just go bad, or?
I think that it was just. I think it was a cold joint.
Okay.
And they didn't. It just failed inspection, or they overlooked it in inspection.
There were two bodge wires, right? Because on the GameCube thing we looked at, there was one for the audio, because it's just the top row that needs to be bodged in.
I think
right?
it's power. I think it's 5 volts.
It is. It's the left audio and power on this one, because they added that second bodge.
Okay. So yeah. So
and
the two
Zach,
bodge.
just to interrupt for a second, when you say cold solder joint, if I didn't see the pictures of what you're talking about, I would envision something that's made well, that maybe just has a cold solder joint on one of the connectors. The picture that you showed was the same as Joe Redifer's, different one. It's not the same one, where it was barely connected at all.
Oh, it's not made well at all. It's not
Right.
made well at all. It's terribly made for $150. I'm sorry, this is just my opinion. I don't mean to offend anybody. I think it's a total ripoff to anybody who would pay $150 for that if they didn't know what the insides of that thing look like. So the most glaring thing, obviously, was the connector. Now, keep in mind, my criticism of this connector is precisely the same criticism that I think we all collectively had months and months and months ago. I think, as a matter of fact, it was back in January when they used the same technique to fit the same connector in the GameCube Mark II adapter. It's the same thing. We were very vocal about the fact that, it's $150 and, you're probably building these things for maybe $15 and you're using this connector that's just not designed to work for this. And the connector just looked like shit. And it worked like shit. I'm sorry. It did. And it does. And so it's the same criticism. They they told me that
Ace is in the chat saying that Joe's just didn't even have a bodge at all. It was just missing.
okay, so it was just missing. I thought it was there, but it broke off.
Maybe it broke off and just after you open it up, it flew somewhere and you don't have the wire.
Okay, so
it's such a thin, flimsy connection anyway. So
you know,
also, would it be the first time where we encounter someone selling a product and not testing everything fully?
Well,
I'll add more to that later.
I'll get into the other half of this, but I just want to say, you know, when I say things, I understand I have this reputation of being a jerk, of being an asshole, and being a dick. I get it, and there's some merit to that. Those
and
are
with good cause.
And with good cause. But when we review things like this, or when I'll speak for myself, when I review something like this, I take a lot of things into account before I open this big ass gaping hole in my face. The $150 price point was always in the forefront of my mind whenever I thought about any of the criticisms I was about to espouse. And I actually reached out to Eon because I'll be perfectly honest with you, and I'll be very candid. After my criticisms of the Mark II, I've heard nothing from the Justin boys. I've heard nothing out of the Eon camp. They used to be very chatty with me and very friendly, but after they gave me that free review unit and I didn't have perfect 10 marks across the board, they literally ghosted me. And they basically said in so many words that they I guess they found my opinions to be unfavorable, and I suppose that it just doesn't jive with them for obvious reasons. But nonetheless, the connector was terrible. And the second part about this, and this is where things get a little more damning. This is not just kind of taking a customer for a ride, but this is kind of taking other people in the community for a ride, in my opinion. There were 4 chips, or 3 chips. I can't even remember. It's been 16 years ago, but there were several chips that were on the board that were epoxied over, so they could not be identified by naked eyes. So some of the footage that I have salvaged, and Bob has this footage, actually. Bob is the only person I think that has this footage. There's footage of me taking the epoxy where they were trying to cover their tracks, they being the manufacturer, of me decapping the epoxy off of these chips to hopefully expose the lasered silk screen on top of the packages. Well, it's interesting. Not only were the chips epoxied so that nobody could look at them, but when you remove the epoxy, the silk on the package was grounded off. They removed part numbers and they epoxied these things. They were really trying to hide and obfuscate what these parts were. Well, I did some digging and I had some help. Does he want to be revealed here?
Sure.
Okay, so we did some digging. Steve was able to match up the clocks that were on the Super 64 board, matched precisely the same clocks that were found on Mike G's RetroTink 2X.
It was just so obvious. I've seen those
Sure.
megahertz numbers before, because one is like a typical audio ADC clock, and the other was the one Analog Devices uses for most of their chips.
So it would appear, I'm being very careful with my language, but I think we can all pretty much draw our own conclusions. Same chips, same basic design. They changed the firmware around because the Super 64 only supports S-video, so component and composite video are out. But firmware has been changed a little bit, but it's the RetroTink 2X that's been consolidated into this self-contained Super 64 and is being sold as an Eon product. Now, there is no dispute. Let me just finish. There is no dispute. I don't know if I'm going to. I don't know if it would. I don't know if I'm comfortable with saying they ripped Mike Chi's RetroTink 2X off. I don't know if I'm comfortable with saying that, but I'm absolutely comfortable with stating the fact that parts that are found on the RetroTink 2X were hidden yet still found on the Super 64. That's unequivocal fact, and that to me was just very disappointing.
I mean, there are only so many ways that you can implement this 240/480i
With slick mode.
with the slick mode, which the Tink also has. I mean, there's only so many combinations of things that are going to do that, so it's
And I'm sorry,
not
Nick, go ahead.
hugely surprising. That's all I'm saying. Like,
No.
I think people in the chat are saying this too, that before opening it up, they would have guessed that. But yeah, we cannot make the claim that they deliberately sent one of those over to China and said, "Hey, reverse engineer this and jam it in our product." We definitely can't make that claim.
You know, there are signs of certain things though, and I'm very comfortable making this analogy. Years ago, when I was thinking about that RGB amp for the SNES Mini, that's when I discovered Bordy's, and I emailed them right away and said, I just had this exact same idea. It's on a napkin. It's got like a ghetto-ass little drawing on it. But, you know, we thought of the exact same thing, and we didn't know each other, so we couldn't obviously have ripped each other off. But fast forward a few years later, Zach comes out with a board, and then somebody else comes out with the same board with the same revision number printed on the PCB. So I'm always extra super freaking careful when I talk publicly about stuff like this. Like, let's say it happened the opposite. Let's say I made my board and Bordy came out with his 6 months later. I would have never said, "Oh, he stole it." You know, it's a very simple conclusion to come to. But copying something so blatantly like, you know, the revision number on the board, this situation does feel like it leans more to that side than the other, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, for sure.
Globalists, Bob. It's the globalists.
Sign-ups. Globalists are here.
Well, I think anything else at this point is kind of speculation. Like that.
Right.
You've laid
I
out
don't
the
want to.
facts. So.
I don't want to. That's exactly right. I don't want to talk with I don't want to provide anecdotal. And I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk anecdotes. I just want to state the fact that, unfortunately, it seems to me after a thorough investigation, the chips on the Super 64, the Nintendo 64 product by Eon, where the chip parts were ripped off the tops and they were epoxied over to plausibly try to hide the fact, are the exact same parts found on the Retro Tink 2X. That's it. That's all I have to say about it. You know, I tweeted about that. Eon never responded. I've not heard from them. I imagine they know about it because I imagine they do. They offered no comment, which I think is damning onto itself. You know, I think I would try to, you know, clear the air. Had I had such accusations or had something like that been leveled at me like that, charges, I think I would have been. You know, hey guys.
Forcefully responded.
Yeah, I think I would have responded, but again, I don't want to speculate, but that's what it is. I hope that we can still do a video on it because I think things like that need to be brought to light. I'm only one person. I can only talk about it so much, but there's certain things that you have, you know, there are a lot of people who make a lot of things for profit in this community, and I just feel like we need to do a good job at policing that to an extent so that, I don't know, I think we just kind of need to take care of each other here. That's all. I think this is a very close community, and
I've been trying to do that shit for over 8 years now, and every time I celebrate somebody that no one's ever heard of before that's done all this amazing stuff, everybody loves me for it, and every time I stand up to the bully, I get absolutely attacked from every angle. Even in the situations where I'm like mostly right, but maybe didn't get it 100% right, I get pummeled. So that's the other reason why I was hesitating to say anything at all, because I don't like standing there by myself with my back against the wall, swinging blindly. You know what I mean?
And talking about the community, I do want to say something else very quickly. Just when things like this happen, don't shoot the messenger, and don't necessarily shoot the provider. For example, if you have a problem, if things like that happen, don't demonize or ostracize the retailer who's just carrying the thing.
Couldn't agree more.
So, for example, Ryan of CastleMania Games, there's no reason for anybody to give him hate for any reason. He doesn't make things. He's just a seller. He's just a distributor. He's just a retailer. I mean, let's all try to keep that in mind. These are good people. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater when things like this happen. Just please keep that in mind.
Yeah, can I
That's
just
all.
take that a small step further too?
No.
In that I very often shit on the Pound cables, and I hate that company with a passion. But first and foremost, I never shit on anybody that buys them. I never cable shame anybody. But I also have never talked bad about people that sell them, whether it's a store or an online store, it doesn't matter.
Limited
Because
run games.
the bottom line is, though, if somebody walks into a store and says, I need to play Super Nintendo on a TV, give me the cheapest thing you got. Your average person these days, if you say, well, there's a couple options, and we got this solution that's much better, and it's cost $100, your average person's going to be like, screw you, stop, just give me the goddamn cheapest one and
That's
figure
right.
it out later.
That's
So it's
right.
actually better for your customers, just to be honest. Like, here's the cheapest. There's much better ways to do it. So let me know what you want to do. We're here if you want to upgrade. You can always trade it in, just like everything else. So no, I would never, ever, ever shit on anybody for selling anything like anything.
I agree,
But-
except for one thing. Whenever I go into a retro game store and they all sell that stupid 3-in-1 shitty power adapter that's going to light your house on fire, I'm always like, God damn it.
Yeah, that bothers me.
Because
Who I obviously have no problem shitting on, though, is people who blindly promote something without knowing anything of it. That part bothers me, but the part that really gets me is having no remorse whatsoever when thousands of people piss their money away on garbage to just stare blankly, or maybe suggesting not even thinking about it at all. So yeah, those are the people I'm upset at, not ever the resellers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask this, and if you guys don't want to answer it, that's okay. I don't think we've really ever talked about this, but how do you guys feel like when you try to foster good relationships with people, even competitors or colleagues, I guess, as we all have in this very niche community, and you try to foster these good relationships, and they send you they send you products for free. They just want your opinion on it. They send you things under the guise that they just want your honest opinion on it, and you give them their honest opinion. And have you ever had an experience where you've done that and they've just kind of stonewalled you?
we'll find out in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
So, Zach, is your 5 minutes up now, or?
I'm sorry, Rene. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, go ahead, Rene. What's up?
Well, I've been away for a couple of months.
It was
Like
the
I
best,
said earlier,
best couple of months ever.
Yeah. It was the same for me. Now fortunately, hell is back. No, I've got several major announcements to do. The first, after Bob threatened my body numerous times, I finally decided to become a retro RGB writer. At first I didn't want to, but then Bob sent me 10 whole American dollars. So
Kind of got obligated, didn't you?
yeah, I mean that translates quite a bit. I was able
You didn't
to.
send it friends and family either on PayPal, so you had to eat the fee.
I was able to do a lump sum payment on my mortgage, so I was really happy about that. Another thing, quick announcement is that Leon Karuliak, I think his name is. He does mods in Toronto. He was sent a this Model 2 VA2 that has like a factory job on it.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so it's got like an additional HC14 chip on there. That's not sure what it's doing yet. So I'm going to make a blog post about this in the following weeks on Retro RGB, and I'm pretty sure I have another VA2 lying here somewhere, so I can do a comparison and scope plots and whatever. Just try to figure out what's going on in this thing.
So thanks to shit like that. That is awesome.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Leon, for sending this. And whoever sent this in to Leon was nice enough to just say, hey, keep it and send me another Model 2 because this one has greater value for analysis.
Yeah, I'd be super interested to know what that is because I've only seen the Zenith mod before, in the bodged in, and that's not the Zenith mod.
No, no, and
Well,
that's
that's a Model 2, right? The Zenith is on the just Model 1s.
No, I have a Model 2. It's a Zenith, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's slightly different than your Zenith mod too. It's a totally different board and totally
Yeah.
different pulse widths on it too. So
Crazy.
You know, one of these days, if there's ever any extra time, I'd like to see if Wes from Second Opinion Games would mail you his console, because he's got a Model 1 Genesis that's the most Frankenstein insane thing I've ever seen, and it was his childhood Genesis. He never modded that thing at all. He sent it to me when the triple bypass first came out, and I opened it up and went, what the hell did you do to this thing? And he goes, what do you mean? It's never been opened. It's got like hand cut heat sinks like glued to the top of chips. It's crazy. You got to see that one. That one's really I've never seen anything like that with Genesis consoles. Sorry.
No, it's cool.
no problem.
I blame Sears. Probably he took it into Sears or something.
The other things I'm working hard on this UMD V2 with it's a new microcontroller architecture that I started using, STM32. So this is going slow, like I said, because there's a huge learning curve for the new software, new everything, new programmers. So eventually that'll be ready for universal mega dumping.
Yeah, Rene,
With
can I
it.
ask about that?
With a GUI for Bob, but don't expect anything until like at least another year. So
Oh, never mind. Fuck. Jesus. I've been waiting for. I love Paul, but god damn it, Paul, get on the ball with the INL retro programmer. Rene, I'm counting on you. Make it happen. You've got 12 months. You son of a bitch. You can do it.
well, it might come out earlier too. I mean, it's just a matter of trying to find enough time to actually sit down and start programming it.
Yeah,
But-
you're a busy guy. I get it.
Yeah, I've got all the framework already figured out on the Teensy architecture. So it's mostly porting code and just making it work with the STM32 libraries with their hardware abstraction layers. So once that's figured out, then it's smooth sailing because I know all the protocols for writing to the chips, for writing to the flash and whatnot. That's been figured out a long time ago. So
That's exciting. I'm excited. I'll keep us updated on that.
yeah, and the other thing is and this is a bit of a segue from when we talked about the Super 64 device, the one that Joe Redifer received.
Mhm.
So we were saying, he received it and it had missing audio channels, right?
Mhm.
So then I postulated, well, this isn't the first time that we've seen someone sell something without proper testing. Well, this has happened to some of my devices, right? I sold several batches of graphics boosters, these little guys, to Stone Age Gamer almost a year ago with a specific test procedure saying you need to test every single goddamn output on this thing, right? The RGB, the composite on the Mega Drive connector, or Genesis connector, sorry, the S-Video and the other composite video and both audios and whatnot. It seems like a batch of 50 that they got mistakenly, the factory mistakenly installed a resistor which is supposed to be DNP, do not populate, and that caused an error on the video encoder chip. So the only video output that actually works is the composite video that's coming out straight to the console. There's no RGB, there's no S video, and they sold these units just like that because apparently they only tested composite video.
Which, by the way, then the person who bought one of these came to me and thinking that it was potentially a problem with our cables, which is like, one of the million reasons why we always say like, it unofficially works with things. At least with in Rene's case, we had tested and we could say it officially works with his product. So, and that's because I can call up Rene and be like, yo, dude, what the fuck's wrong with your garbage?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly.
Yeah, but yeah. So I gave. I mean, this has happened numerous times now for Stone Age Gamer. So I've decided that I'm not going to give them any more batches of graphics boosters. On top of that, I've also decided to completely sell my soul to another web store which will be carrying graphics boosters very soon, and most of my other products as well. And that's, they're in the chat right now. It's CastleMania Games.
Oh, you idiot!
That dude will take you to the cleaners.
There you go.
I'm imagining the scene where everybody in Simpsons gets total frontal lobotomies. Rene, it's bliss.
Yeah, I'll be perfect. I'll be very honest about this. If there's one sort of retro gaming tech retailer that I really do respect and appreciate, it is Ryan of CastleMania Games. He's only been around for a very short period of time, but I think from the perspective of character, I think he's probably the best. I really mean that. I think he's a really good person. Don't hate the messenger.
He's a good character. He's got good stats.
He's got
you like his special moves.
Ryan is really good at straddling that fence between all of these different manufacturers that are really competitors with one another, and kissing the asses and creating allegiances with an umbrella of different people. And you've got to respect that.
I just get nervous when you said straddle, because when Voltar says the word straddle, who knows where that conversation's going?
Please, Bob, somebody might be watching this episode with their wife, and they might be triggered by that. Please don't get into that.
Yeah, I mean, it is super annoying to me because both me and Rene and Steve, Steve too, just spent probably a combined total of like 2 to 3 hours of debugging time, because this guy, he's got the HD Retrovision cable, you've got your TV, he had 3 different consoles, he had the booster, so it's like trying to figure out what the hell's going wrong in this giant mess of shit when all it would have taken was Stone Age Gamer testing one of those units. Because they were all bad.
That's right, because even just a spot check in one of them would have revealed an issue. Because when you order 50 units from the factory, they don't mistakenly populate just one resistor on one board and then not put it on the rest. I mean, sure, that could happen, but the odds are if they installed a resistor, they installed it everywhere.
Yeah.
So could I ask an honest question from you guys, from your opinion on something like this? When I used to get the runs of those little RGB amps, those were so simple and basic circuits on there. Every single time that I got a batch in from I had them pre-made. I didn't make them myself. I would test one, and that was it. Out of the many that I sold, I had a couple of, I probably had less than 1% of people have problems. And out of that, almost every single one was somebody using like a 100-watt soldering iron on it and burning a hole right through or something. But
yes.
Was that the right or wrong thing to do? As like a basic, simple board when you're doing a run of 50 or 100, just testing one?
Well, here's the difference. You were talking about a turnkey product. A turnkey product is what HD Rectal-Vision provides. A turnkey product is what Rene provides in the TurboGrafx booster. If you're talking about a mod board, which is something that I'm very distinguished in because I'm a master of the custodial arts, you're talking about something that is on a little bit different of a playing field. Now, what I do, my personal system these days, because I have a really good fabricator that does a lot of small little corner case testing at the factory now, I will do a sample. If I have like 300 boards, I'll do a sample of maybe 30 or 40 over the course of several days. And if they all check out well, I'm in great shape. Depending on what failure rate there is, I'll go and look at more. But over the years I've been doing this, I've had I think two boards that had problems that were inherent to either the driver on there or something else. Everything else has always been user error.
Mm. Yeah, I will reiterate, though, that I did visually check every one. Every time I got an order, I would look at it, really, make sure under good light, and I never found anything, but I at least checked to make sure a resistor didn't get knocked off, the chip wasn't misaligned or anything like that.
And that's generally all you really need to do, Bob, because when you go beyond that, you're talking about an IC failure. and an IC failure is something that, at least in my experience with those 70 those Texas Instruments drivers, that's, I don't know, Steve. How many in your cables? If you had to guess, how many, what has the failure rate been on the drivers in your SNES and Genesis cables over the course of selling them for a few years?
What's the failure rate been when they were used correctly? I think that's the proper
Right.
question to ask.
Not a user error, but what if
Right.
you had to just pull a number out of your tight little athletic asshole, what would you say?
0.03%.
Okay,
There you go.
there you go. So typically visual inspection's enough to suffice, Bob.
Yeah, but
Cool.
for a turnkey product though,
You've
like
got to test it.
yeah, like a graphics booster or the RetroVision cables, you've got to test absolutely everything that you're listing as a feature on the device.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
If you're saying it's got S-video and RGB and 2 different sync types and whatnot, you got to test those.
So would you test each individual one? I know in a perfect world you would, but you're not a company making a run of 10,000. So would a smaller company, would you suggest that they test each one on the bench, or just one or two?
Can I
Yeah.
answer that?
Go for it, Steve.
So on a fresh product that's brand new, you would test a lot of them. And as the design matures, then you would taper that down. So like nowadays, like let's say we get like a PlayStation 2/3 cable batch, I would only take a handful of those versus when we first got them, I would test 1 or 2 full cases of them.
But that's a little disingenuous because they're being tested at the factory.
They are being tested at the factory too. So yeah, that's a good point because I don't think that there is a test procedure for the factory to test anything. They have to rely on visual inspection and to make sure their process was correct. So yes, our factory does test things many times before it gets put into a bag or a box and gets shipped out. But we still, once they get here into our warehouse, I drive over there and I grab a handful of them. Depending on if the product's more complicated, I test more. If it's simpler product, I test less. That's a factor too. But then I would, as the product matures too, that number goes down as well.
No, it's a super good answer.
But it's always higher than 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
Like even like 10 runs from now, if we're still not dead, I would still at least test one before being like, okay, Ryan can buy these from us now.
Yeah.
So I want to. There was a question that went in the chat about 5 minutes ago from iPhone user that said, "Why didn't I test the units before I shipped them to Stone Age Gamer?" Well, it's very simple. Is that I ordered the graphics boosters from the factories and had them shipped directly to Stone Age Gamer, along with a description of how to test. So
it's out of your
his
hands.
It was his responsibility to test.
Right.
And I'm using the same model with CastleMania, right? No product is coming into my house. It's all from the factory.
It'd be really stupid if it did. All that shipping
would.
and import taxes and all that stuff, that'd be ridiculous if you tested it.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure they're not going to pay. They wouldn't pay the same rate if you had to test it.
Right.
I'm sure it'd be a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Did
and
you?
Ryan
sorry.
said that he's machining an enclosure too. Some people have asked that, so in the chat, I mean, so.
Renee,
Yeah,
I wanted
well-
to ask you. Renee. After I remember when that happened, did you reach out to Stone Age Gamer and did they have a response as to what their policy or their procedure was for that?
They said that they didn't have a PVM, therefore they could not test all the outputs.
So
Oh,
they told
man.
me to. They said they
And
were
that-
getting
that-
one
that's
though.
happened.
So
That's happened twice as well, because I caught them once, I think, in January, and then once about 2 months ago again, and we've been through the same kind of conversation both times. Like, hey, you got to test all the.
Why does it
Outputs
take
on
a
these
PVM to test the video outputs?
I know,
don't
and I-
understand that.
all they have is a modern TV, so it's not going to have S video on it.
Okay, but
drives
that
me nuts.
doesn't mean.
So
You
you
don't
know
have
who
to
I
have a
am.
PVM,
Shoot me an
but,
email.
yeah.
I'll send you an 8-inch PVM with all the inputs you need to test it.
Yeah.
The total, including shipping, will be less than $100. Yeah,
I just-
that stuff frustrates me.
That's a lame excuse. I don't know. I don't know any. They've never reached out to me for anything, so I don't know anything about Stone Age Gamer, so I can't say anything one way or the other. But that's a very interesting retort.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only additional thing I will say about Stone Age Gamer is if they do want to carry the graphics booster still, they can approach Ryan and buy some from him.
That's not funny, but it's pretty good.
It's kind of funny.
Go Ryan, go! I believe in you, Ryan. Listen. I'm putting my money on Ryan anyway.
So I'm not giving out any timetables or time frames or whatnot because that's all in Ryan's hands. But I mean, eventually, soon enough, stuff will be available on his store.
I do want to make a quick announcement concerning Ryan. Ryan, not just CastleMania Games, but Ryan specifically will be carrying my sperm.
Is he offering support for it too?
Look for an update in my newsletter next month. Yeah, he's going to offer support for it, hands-on too.
You know, just to step back for a minute, though, I certainly have had experience with small companies, and from what I've heard and what my experience with Stone Age Gamer is, they do a great job with the flash carts and ROM carts stuff. So maybe it's just growing pains. Maybe they're trying to get into stuff that you know, and now they're realizing we should have never got into this. We're not set up for this. We don't know what we're doing. It's kind of a very typical small company thing to have happen. So.
Maybe.
I'm certainly not gonna say nobody buy from Stone Age Gamer again, but maybe nobody buy the graphics booster.
Right. Absolutely
Right.
not.
Respectfully.
So-
They could be good people. We don't know. I don't know.
I have it on good faith that Stone Age Gamer do in fact own PDMs, and thus they would have been able to test the graphics booster appropriately. So it seems to be more a case of laziness than anything else.
So you're saying they lied to you?
I am saying that I have it on good faith that they have PDMs in their store.
Okay, so you're inferring that they were dishonest. Okay, moving on.
Laziness or incompetence?
I hate lies so much.
Isn't it really the same thing in this case?
Meh. Close enough.
Some people just don't understand. I don't like it. I don't like inferring motivations.
Yeah,
we know the result. And that's it. So.
Right. We can't. Yeah, we can't even assume, you know, why they didn't. But it doesn't matter. So Rene, I think that's a good move. I just want everyone to know I am not iPhone user. The things that he is saying has nothing to. I am not him. I'm not him. I'm not him.
All right, Steve,
Anyways.
your go.
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah, make it fast, Steve, please. We don't have a night.
Wait. Okay.
No, don't make it too fast, because.
Can I
use
just
the
get
restroom.
5 minutes?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold
I'll
on.
count this time. Let me turn on my
time
watch.
you on my wrist.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead.
So the stream's gonna go to like midnight. Okay. Yeah. So there's one thing I'm working on is all the test equipment for the Dreamcast stuff, and so I pulled out these old boards that were the old pogo pin boards from the.
What, did you just kill a cat up there? You just kill a cat?
Nah, the stupid speaker got caught on the chair.
Well, you know, the clock's ticking, Steve. Can we hurry this up?
Yeah. So the pogo pin thing was this thing that like pushes a PCB down onto these spring-loaded pins. So the PCB for the circuit board goes in here, and previously I made these things that kind of hold the pogo pins in place. These PCBs that get soldered to and then go to connectors to go to the electronics. The way I did them last time was because they're so close together. I don't know if you'll see them, but these holes are like super close together. And so I couldn't like have normal like annular rings here because then they would like overlap with each other. And so what I did on the other side is I just like put these like square pads. And so when the thing would go through, I would put solder that would go into the square pads. But because I didn't think that was sturdy enough, we had to like glob on epoxy on the other end here. So where these things got soldered, just glob this epoxy so it's more sturdy. Didn't want to do that this time with the Dreamcast, but then the reason why I got these things to line up so perfectly is I would drill these holes, like I would order them smaller from the factory, from the PCB factory. So I would drill them myself on the drill press with the exact bit I knew I needed. So there was no nonsense with tolerances and stuff like that. And I kind of didn't want to do that this time. And so I kind of went and made like a drill test PCB because I was curious to know what the factory did between a here, I don't know if you guys can.
That's close, but you got a piece of white paper to put behind it. They usually have. Oh wait, you had it. Keep it right there. Don't move. Don't move.
So
don't breathe. Don't.
So what I did is these are in mils. And so I just drilled a non-plated hole and then a plated hole right under it, and then I got it back and I was measuring it, and I was putting the pogo pin through these to see how much play there is, because the whole point is if these are like kind of moving around too much, they're not going to land on the test pad. So I kind of like just made a couple of these like with different sizes, and I found out that at least this fabricator that Oshpark used this time, they used different ones. Apparently what they did for these is sorry, I don't know, is this one or
perfect,
two? That's pretty good. That's good. Yep.
So what do I have? I have 52, 53, 54, and 50. No, I don't know.
54, 55, and 55.
59.5, right? 52 and 55 and 59.5 are real drill bit sizes you can purchase. And so I wanted to see, first of all, what they would do with just specified drill hits that do not have a matching drill bit. And so it looks like they round up to the next one. So like the 53 and the 54, they would round those up to 55. The other thing I noticed was it seems like on the plated holes that they drill the hole the next size up and then plate it, because the plating will shrink the diameter a bit. So does that make sense? Like for
it makes great sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay. No, it's right on.
But it turns out that because they go one drill higher and then they fill in a little bit, the plated versions are still slightly bigger than the non-plated versions.
Now that's interesting to me.
It doesn't cancel out the jump up to drill size completely. It only like seems to cover half of it. So that was the interesting thing that I found out was just that was the most interesting thing. And so now I have to see if there's a little bit of play, but the thing is, have you noticed I stacked two on top of each other? So it like kind of has two places that all the pogo pins have to go through, so they're kind of more in line and won't skew this way. So I don't know. Hopefully it'll line up.
So Steve, I have a question before you move on to something else. So the difference in holes, is that invariant of the annular ring size? Or?
Yes. So the holes, if you look closely, I mean, it's hard to see on this thing, but if you look closely, either like on the microscope or just maybe just with a magnifier, you'll notice that the annular ring will grow, but like 53, 54, and 55 all have the same opening size.
Okay.
Right.
Because the copper artwork is more accurate than the drill press, because the drill, you need physical drill bits, and you don't have like that precision on unless you custom made drill bits. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. It did for me. I didn't even ask it, but yeah.
All right, I guess.
All right, can we get to? Are you done, Steve? Please.
You done?
Yeah, I think my 5 minutes is up.
What a fuckface!
I told you I was an asshole.
I could just add to that maybe is when I spec the edge connector size on say like an FM power base or something, I've always noticed that the edge routing on the PCB was usually about 2 to 3 mil larger always than what the Gerber specified.
Now, do you think that's because? Let me ask you something, Rene. Did you panelize your power base, or did you just have the factory do that?
No, the factory would panelize it. So I'm thinking like whatever edge routing bit they're using.
Yeah. There's a discrete amount. There's a discrete set of bits.
There's steps involved in that stepper motor, or like Steve says, the bits, right? So it's routing.
You're going to follow the middle somewhere.
Yeah, it's routing to that middle size, and then there's tool A and tool B, and the particular dimension that I'm asking for kind of falls in the middle. You need like a tool that's between A and B. Right?
Yeah, you know a lot about beveling. You know a lot more about cartridge design than I think anyone here. So you'd be the guy to talk to.
So like anything mechanical would probably have this
issue.
Be aware of any type of mechanical process.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
So
right,
what's next?
Before my annular ring gets any larger, I'd like to talk about, so once you get to be a famous and sexy, important YouTuber like myself.
Oh, damn it.
All you have to do is tweet, be like, yo, Ryan, that M cable looks really cool, ... And then he just sends you stuff for free, and all you have to do in exchange is give a glowing review about it. And so it's a pretty sweet deal. So I got this M cable cinema edition.
What? Were you able to get that in the States?
Yes, they do. Okay. He does ship to the East Coast.
What the fuck?
So I already tested the gaming edition cable that Bob sent me. Wasn't super thrilled with that thing. But I thought maybe
you didn't get paid to review that one.
Yeah, so. I didn't get paid to review, but this one is the best cable you will ever buy. This one, the description of this thing is: imagine an intelligent 4K pixel processor that enriches your visual experience instantly. This is the promise of M cable.
Here's cash, credit card. Just get it all to me.
COD?
Yeah, money orders. I'll get you anything. I want that.
So I had more hope for this actually, because I thought, cinema cable, you can actually spend a little more time doing the processing because things like lag don't matter. But I mean, I didn't hate this thing. I'll say that up front. It wasn't terrible. It's just I don't really understand the situation in which one would use it. So my first thought was, okay, let me test this on like anime and animation. So I tried with like a Miyazaki movie, and I tried with Aladdin. And in that case, where I thought it was going to do really well, I actually thought it performed the worst. I thought because I was doing a bunch of comparisons. My Blu-ray player can upscale to 1080, so I would have to set the Blu-ray player to 480 and then let this thing take it up to 1080, and then compare that to just the Blu-ray scaling it, and how did this perform if the Blu-ray player was already scaling it. Point being, I thought the best output on the animation content was actually just the Blu-ray scaling. Made itself up to 1080, probably because it was just doing something super simple, and whatever algorithms in this are just not suited for that content. The live action content was a little more, there's a little more nuance to that. I did think this provided a decent filter for like 480p DVD content. So I was watching Turtles.
Excellent choice, sir.
Turtles 1. And it's quite a noisy DVD. And the smoothing stuff that they're doing it does improve it a fair bit, though it also adds some artifacts here and there that you start noticing if you're watching really closely. If you don't have that kind of eye for those things, it may provide enough benefit where the improvement in overall video quality is worth it. But that was when I set my Blu-ray player down to 480. So that is kind of an annoyance, right? Because you'd have to set your player to 480 for a DVD, but then go in and change it when you want your Blu-ray player to output Blu-rays as they are. So I don't know. It's just kind of a mess. It just seems like a real hassle to have to deal with. I also used this with an actual 1080p Blu-ray content, and the difference was 0. And it did not take it to 4K. I could not get this thing to output 4K for the life of me. I have no idea what the fuck it's talking about.
Well, Nick, let me just ask you real quick. You're talking about the smoothing algorithms not being so ideal. Would it be best to phrase it as the smoothing isn't so much of a it's not so much of a slick mode on that? It's not very slick.
I don't know what it's
slick.
doing. It says it's a contextual video algorithm, which to me says that it's probably taking some window of pixels in an area and classifying that window. So it can look at, let's just pretend it's like a 5x5 block of pixels. And it looks at those pixels and it says, okay, I think this is an edge, or I think this is a texture, or I think this should be a smooth region, and we'll apply different algorithms depending on that classification. That's my guess as to what contextual video algorithm is, which makes sense. I think that's something that may, add small amount of lag, but shouldn't really matter for a movie product.
All of this sounds really bad, though, for, our classic retro 2D sprite art content, though. It's definitely something you wouldn't want to pair with,
this is the cinema one, so you wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
I don't think it's for 2D stuff, regardless if it's the gaming edition or not. I think the only people that have ever praised this...
Yeah, the gaming edition one is... I would not use it with old retro content. I thought maybe it was okay with, GameCube and PS2. I'm kind of on the edge with that. I could go either way.
Joe just said you gotta set your Blu-ray player to 24 frames per second for 4K upscaling. That's right.
Okay.
I remember that now. The M cable won't do 4K 60, only 4K 24.
Hey, Bob, why did your voice get so deep all of a sudden? Are you over there? What are you doing over there?
I'm getting tipsy. I'm on 4.
It's only going to take. You got to change the sampling.
I thought you put on some audio filter.
I did too. He's like, I'm over here, and my name's Bob, and I'm so drunk and.
To be honest, there's
beautiful.
I keep hearing a weird digital buzz in my ears, so there's got to be something with my setup. I wouldn't be surprised if my audio went nuts.
It's amazing. You sound like Barry Manilow.
Seriously?
You sound like you ate way too many mashed potatoes, and you're like, you sound like John Goodman.
Or what's that scene where, is that in Old School or something, where Will Ferrell gets hit with the tranquilizer dart? Everything's in slow-mo.
So
Okay,
Bob, in your next video, I want deep voice, Bob. Totally.
Is this fixed? Is it back to me?
Yeah, it is
that's
now.
Yeah,
Okay.
get rid of that. Go back.
I unplugged the Yeti and plugged it back in. That's all that was.
You're not using burst transmission. Are you nearby?
So I guess, to me, if you had a dedicated DVD player where you didn't have to mess with the settings, and you use that separately from your Blu-ray player, that's where I might use this.
Okay,
Worth $100 dollars, I don't think so, but thanks, Ryan. Keep sending me more free stuff.
Yeah, Ryan.
My problem with the product like that, and it's any cable, in my opinion, should be like a transparent medium to take your signal from point A to point B. And I really have a hard time, not accepting, but I wouldn't use a cable that is trying to mess with my signal. It's just, to me, a cable.
Yeah. Throw out the HD Retrovision cables, because
No, but
Only buy PS2 and Wii cables and extensions. That's it.
Yours clearly has a purpose, to change the signal type from RGB to component, but this is just taking
this is
HDMI to HDMI and will affect the image by 0.01% some portion of the time.
It's very black boxy,
Well,
which bothers
I have
me.
2 questions. First of all, Bob, hit the goddamn mute button, please. There's a 747 parking in your hallway as we speak. Bob, can you... Okay, one question's about the cable. The other question's for Bob. Bob, you don't have to answer it right now. Can you get your voice deep again? And if you can you say...
There's a fucking dirt in your neck.
Can you say, just call me Deep Throat? No, I'm dead serious. Bob,
Just
get
call
your
me
voice
Deep
deep
Throat.
and say, just call me Deep Throat, and let me respond to that. Nick, or anybody, these cables. I had a question 7 months ago when we were talking about these. Has anyone, just for the sake of academia, used one of these cables with an OSSC to see if it fixes the bad lines in SNES output when you line triple or line quadruple or line 5x to see if it could stop dropouts just for fun? Did anyone ever test that?
I don't have a TV that has that issue, so I couldn't.
Bob,
Somebody in my Q&As a while back mentioned that it did improve the compatibility for them, and this is also a person that tried that just for fun, but predominantly uses their M cable because they really like what it does to 480i PS2 through the OSSC through that and all that stuff.
Bob,
so it actually makes sense.
No, I really wasn't caring. I don't really care for that answer. But Bob, can you just with a deep voice say, what I'd asked you to say?
I will do that the day that you release your Neo Geo product for sale.
Bob, it's up. It's on the store right now. I don't know how you missed it. Now go ahead and say it.
Tell him he has to go to your party.
The other thing is, just real quick,
Damn it.
from a design perspective, this USB cable is way too long. Like, this is
I don't understand what that was all about.
I guess if you're gonna really plug this into a wall, but who the hell is gonna do that?
I want to make like a general announcement to all the people who are selling stuff that needs a USB micro connection. Stop providing USB micro cables. Everyone's got like 20 of these lying around.
No, you can never have too many. Please
I'm gonna
keep
put
packaging.
two. I'm gonna put
Please-
two in the box now.
Please keep
Damn it.
packaging that shit. How dare you, Rene? Rene, don't make me fucking come to Canada. You know I've already been banned once.
All right,
You can't come
enough
in. You
about
can't
that.
get in.
We can kind of transition and talk about the Mega SD if you want.
Wait. Let's not talk about transitioning here, please. We don't want to get strucken off. What the fuck are you doing, Nick?
Yeah, and one more thing about what you were just saying, though, about watching video and movies and all that stuff. That was like a weird little obsession of mine for a while, is trying to get the best way to find to watch all of your movies and whatever you want to do. Unfortunately, it's useless now because most 4K Ultra HD discs are mastered in 2K, so it's all gone to shit. But when it did matter, I did go through and test a ton of stuff that were M cable-like, that were try to, upscalers, different ways to process. And the only thing that really made a difference were really good deinterlacers. So there was one Oppo DVD player, it wasn't even a Blu-ray player, that just did a ridiculously good job with 480i DVDs. Once you started to get into, into the high def stuff, I still was a massive fan of Oppo until they decided to stop making players, of course. But
You know what would be interesting? I don't know if anyone's done this, but this cable may serve as a good utility if it does a really good job with odd and even frame cycling or interlaced video content. Shoot, maybe this might be a good way to bring your Laserdisc into the digital domain. Maybe.
yeah, so that's
I
I've been
could
talking
set my
to
Blu-ray
Chad
player
Page
to
about that.
interlace and see.
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
Definitely give it a try, because the Chad Page, the guy that was the part of the he did LD Decode, the software that decoded the Doomsday Duplicator, and I was really annoying him with deinterlacing questions, and he basically said even the best possible things you can do are just, you'll never get it perfect, and that's why his LD decode software keeps it in 480i and just gets the most detail you can out of it, and then just use whatever deinterlacer you got after that.
So we're getting actually an overwhelming amount of requests for Boltar or us to talk about the Mega SD.
Yeah,
I still
so there was a bit of controversy about this thing. Thanks,
Serial
Rene.
number? Serial number, right?
Oh yeah, I mean I hate the fucking serial number thing.
Are you talking about the serial number being married to the firmware and you have to go through all the
it's
tricks?
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the same thing with Cydyne. I hate that shit.
Yeah. No, I was referring to Bevelgate
2019?
2.0.
Is that a Rene thing?
Well, I unlike Flashcard Gate, I didn't, provoke anyone on Twitter this time, so I'm letting the whole thing just play out, and I'm not getting involved at all publicly.
All right, time to get involved.
I wrote a blog post specifically to help people identify good repro carts from bad repro carts, and that's where my involvement ends. Tonight I'll make an exception.
The only involvement I have in this is I heard it in some. It might have been Bob's Discord. It was a Discord, and somebody was talking about the Mega SD, the production run of the Mega SD carts having A, no bevel or virtually zero bevel, and B, an Enig finish on this cartridge. And I just asked in a Twitter, and there was sort of a Twitter chain going. And it was concerning the Mega SD. And I said, did anyone ever check? Has anyone ever corroborated, whether or not the edges are beveled on the production run of those carts, and if it's Enig only? And evidently, yes, it's only Enig, and yes, the true production carts don't really have from what I've seen, they have a very small edged honing, but they don't have like a true mechanical bevel. Excuse me. So I don't know, but that's all the involvement I have, and I thought that was very unfortunate for such an expensive device. Once again, to kind of screw the pooch.
And just to clarify what Voltar said, when he's saying edge honing on the edge of the PCB, that's just like a router bit going on the edge to get rid of the mouse bites between the panelized boards.
That's right. To get the little mouse bites off, and to hopefully keep you from slicing your finger off, because those boards can be very sharp if they're not finished.
Well, they didn't do shit about the mouse bites on the sides of this thing at all. Those are
they're still there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Those are still there, and they're plenty. They're not. I mean, you're not going to cut yourself on them, but you can feel them plenty. As for the beveling, I don't know what the proper angle is. If I was to guess on this, it would probably be around like a 10-degree type thing. It's super shallow. It's more rounded than beveled on mine. But other people have said they've had zero bevel, so I don't know. I may have just gotten one of these like earlier ones that.
So the way it was explained to me, and Firebrand X actually took some really, really good pictures. He has a pre-production model and he has a production model. What had happened was the pre-production or the prototyping model that they were all using has a beautiful bevel, and these pictures are on Twitter. I mean, it's a beautiful, probably a 60-degree bevel on both sides. What happened was that some people who pre-ordered received a pre-production version of the Mega SD. That's why very few people are reporting they have a bevel, and everybody else doesn't have a bevel. And the way Firebrand explained it to me was, they kind of, a few people kind of broached the subject with Alex, just trying to communicate to him that, listen, people are going to raise hell if this bevel isn't there on this connector, and he just wasn't concerned about it. Much less the Enig finish, it just wasn't a big deal. And I think that's, there's a consistent trend I've noticed with Terra Onion. Their technology and with their products are so amazing. They could be so phenomenal. Yet I don't understand this failure to recognize the necessity for getting the simple things right. The simple things are just as important as the super convoluted and complicated things. And they just kind of throw their noses up in the air and they get mad at people who really bring this to their attention. It was a nightmare working on the SSDS3. I'm not going to lie about it. You know, that was a goddamn disaster, and I got treated pretty. I'm not going to get into it, but I got treated pretty crappy there for a long time, and I just tried to help them out. And I don't know. I wish better for them. It's such a shame that this awesome stuff they make gets hampered by the little shit.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a pound cable, right? Like, this is not a $25 just, you know, you get what you pay for kind of thing. This is, I forgot what I paid for this now, $300 or something, for maybe more with shipping.
I got a question about you said the pre-production units. Like, how do you get a bevel? I've seen the edge connector, like the gold fingers are like right up to the edge. How do you get a bevel without like grinding into the copper? Maybe they did have the copper ground on those pre-production units.
I don't know, but you know, Firebrand said, "Oh, well, you know why I thought it was always beveled was because he pulled out his pre-production unit and he showed it to he showed pictures and he's like, it's a beautiful bevel." And the production model, the production run doesn't have, I guess, the bevel that the pre-production has. Todd that runs this bullshit is saying that's not entirely accurate. I'm sorry if it's not. Please clarify. I'm just going by what was told to me.
To be honest, I don't.
Go ahead, Rene. Rene wanted to say.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Rene. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rene. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we need to say just real quick that, you know, the purpose of a beveled edge is to, you know, considerably reduce the insertion force on the console's edge connector. Right? If you imagine like a flat square piece coming into essentially like a V groove of the contacts in the edge connector, if the edge is hitting those contacts, it's hard on them. It's a lot of mechanical force. Whereas if the PCB is angled, and usually you'll have like a 30-degree, or depending on your point of view, 60-degree edge on both sides. So it slowly pushes out the contacts as the PCB is inserted. The force is much less dramatic on the console's edge connector, and it doesn't reduce its lifespan as much.
Right. Because the connector pins are able to, it's graduating down into it. It's not. Yeah. It's a nice smooth cycle. But the Enix
Todd's in the chat. What is he saying about brown PCB versus blue PCB? What is the brown PCB? That's what I have.
I believe he's saying that I think the brown PCB was the pre-production, and what happened was when they were doing the high volume production run of these, they changed the PCB color to blue. But when they did that, the factory also inadvertently changed what I guess they're classifying as a bevel, which I don't really call a bevel, but they changed that on them.
Okay, Mobius said the brown is the early run, so that makes sense why mine seems to have a bevel, though I still would say this is a pretty shallow bevel. I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
And I'd like to point out, like, even on a small batch PCB run, like 50 units, the factory would not necessarily bevel the edge exactly to my drawing, which is a 30-degree bevel, but they'd say, oh, for a small batch we can do 45, and I'd be okay. Well, 45 is fine, and they wouldn't even charge extra for that. When you get into larger runs, like 1,000 units, they'll go all out and they'll do the exact spec that you're asking for. On the Tanglewood run, they did the exact measurements that we gave. You know, the degrees, what matches almost perfectly a standard Genesis cart.
Because you're paying for like a setup cost, and then that gets spread out across.
That's right.
Like, all those units.
It's also a little weird to like know that I have a brown PCB, which signifies that I have a prototype product. I don't know. Something's kind of like something's off there.
I mean, how much is this? I mean, realistically, how much is the Mega SD?
I think I probably spent about $320 on it or something.
Okay, $320 is way too much money to spend to fuck this stuff up. I'm sorry. If this was 100, 125, maybe even 150, I'd be a little more forgiving. But if it's out of door cost is over $300, guys, come on.
Todd's saying it's not a prototype. What?
Okay. Well,
Everyone's saying
pre-production,
different
whatever.
things in the chat.
Right.
And in the grand scheme of things, the additional cost that they would incur in getting proper plating on those gold fingers would not have impacted the cost of a $300 device.
What are you talking about? 10 cents a unit? Would you think, Rene, to hard plate those? 10
Even
or
if
20
it was-
cents?
Even if it was $5 at $300, it's not going to
Then
be.
it's that volume, right?
I mean, it depends. I mean, what I've seen from the shops that I've used is you could have a setup fee anywhere from $100 to $500 to get gold fingers
Right.
on PCB, but that cost is the same regardless of how many PCBs you are actually ordering.
Yeah,
So
this was
very-
like $250 for this, but I got like 20 of them. Right. But,
Yeah. So if you're in the chat and you're ordering PCBs and you're wondering how can I tell if I'm getting gold fingers or not, if the price is not exuberantly high, then you're not getting gold fingers. It's quite that simple.
yeah, they
Yeah.
have to set up two machines, two different NREs, non-recurring engineering fees. One for the fixture that gets the card gold onto the gold fingers, and the other is for what we discussed before to set up the machine that you run through to get the cut.
And if you're going to get electroplating, or if you're going to get hard gold flashing, I think it's important to also ask your board house how many and what thickness in microns is their hard gold flashing. That's super important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, if you're paying like if it seems kind of cheap for hard gold, it's probably because the hard gold's maybe 2.3 microns thick. I mean, so it's really important. But not to rag on it or anything, but $280 plus $300, that's a big deal, man. That's a big deal to me.
Yeah, and let's be clear, like with all
And let me
things,
say
I'm
something
not
else real
entirely
quick.
shitting on this product. It's
Of course not.
It's an awesome
Nick
product.
and Bob.
It works really well, and it's super cool to play your Sega CD games from a flash card. Like that's an awesome
phenomenal
experience.
It's phenomenal engineering.
Yeah, this is the least of my worries. I'll be very careful when I insert it into my console. I really couldn't give a shit. I do have to say, maybe I'm wrong to think this, but if I were making let's say a prototype of like 5 or 10 or something, I would never in a million years worry about or think about getting gold plated and beveled edges. Beveled if it could, great, sure. But especially the gold plating for 5 or 10 prototypes that I was making, I would never consider that. I would never piss the money away. I would just use whatever the cheapest was, test my prototypes, and move on.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree, disagree?
Of course.
It sounds like you read Rene's article.
Yeah.
Yeah, your prototypes
The
are
one
definitely
that's
going to be
published.
Enig. I don't ask for bevels on my prototypes. I just use sanding paper. Usually, I'll be very careful. I'll sand down edges so that it's smooth enough to get into my test consoles. Note: I have actually irreparably damaged a Genesis 2 with improperly beveled test PCBs, but I did cycle the connector like a good 2,000 to 3,000 times. So for most people, no, it's not going to be a major problem. I mean, the Mega SD is operating at the proper voltages and whatnot, so it's not going to blow up your console if you're. Unfortunately, it's not going to blow up your console. I mean, I would like to land on a product that actually does blow up at one point, but.
Well, what do you think's more?
So
What? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So, like Bob said, right? Just be careful. I mean, if yours isn't edge beveled, then don't take it in or out 500 times in a row. That could be bad.
Yeah. So the nice thing is, right? Like a lot of us now have multiple Sega Genesises. I do, and this is just going to sit in one of them and not be inserted and reinserted. Like I'll have my one Genesis for games, and I'll have a 32X in it, and I'll use it when I want to play cartridges. And if I want to use this thing, it'll just be sitting in one of my other Genesises that permanently, basically. So
Well, let me ask Rene, or anyone. everyone can answer this, but Rene, what is more damning for you? The fact that the edge connector, for all intents and purposes, really doesn't have an acceptable bevel, or that the finish of the edge fingers is enig and no hard gold flashing? What's the most damnable offense for you?
I think the finish is a bigger deal because
agree.
that's going to wear out rather fast in the right conditions.
I was thinking
also,
the same.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I was thinking the same thing because even if you get it in your console and leave it there, wouldn't the worst case scenario, I'm talking about worst case, be that the copper is exposed, and after enough humidity and oxidation, you'll get like corrosion on the copper, like the green stuff, that would transfer to the Genesis teeth, right? And then you'd have, if you ever removed it and then plugged something else in, then you could have a bad connection there, right? Wouldn't that be the worst case that could happen? Or am I thinking about this wrong?
It's like original NES all over again, right? Bad connectors end up causing bad connections on games.
That's right.
Yeah, I guess my thinking on it was more along the lines of, this is a $300 product. If the edge connectors get ruined on it and stops working, you're out $300. Whereas if the bevel busts up your Genesis's pin connector, you have to either replace the Genesis or the cartridge slot. So that's like a little bit cheaper of a fix. I don't know.
If they fix it now, I mean, in all honesty, if they put the bevel on it and if they actually make the connector proper, it's very likely I would be inclined to buy one. Right now, no, but absolutely, it's a fucking phenomenal piece of technology. It's just
absolutely
those two things are.
I know some consumers like don't like when there's updates to things, but I think that's stupid, and you should update stuff anyway.
Agreed.
And Nick just has to suck it up like a real man.
Yeah, man.
I do see the point, and it's something that all of us seem to agree about, though, in that the more expensive something is, the more attention to detail should be paid to it. So if, like, I'm sorry to bring it up, but it's a perfect example. If the Super 64 was a $49.99 product, none of us would ever say a single bad thing about it. We might make a jab about the stupid broken audio connectors, but at $50, pull whatever cost you can out of that thing and let everybody love it. But
That's
at 150, and same thing with this. It's like, it's, you know, and it's not that I'm saying this shouldn't be a $300 product. This should be a $300 product.
I had no problem pulling the trigger on it. No problem.
Yeah, absolutely, it should be. But you know, it's absolutely worth $299. But the problem, though, Bob, and this is, you know, this is from the, this is directly from the source. Quality can't be measured, Bob.
I also agree that it's worth $300. I've easily spent more than that on a rather mediocre Sega CD library. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's totally worth $299. I think it's great. Fix the salient point is, fix these two issues. Phenomenal product. I don't have anything really bad to say about it other than this bullshit.
And they've been balls to the wall with firmware updates too. All the little tweaks and stuff that they've gotten. So they're obviously trying. So
right.
You know, early adopters.
The only thing I will complain about, if they do make a hardware update that, you know, does do the beveled edge and the gold plating correctly, that should not increase the price at all.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Then I'll scream bloody murder if that happens.
So I know I'm probably just opening up a can of worms by asking this, but Steve, mentioned this a few years ago. So when I was first talking about prototypes and, you know, beveled edges and stuff, I mean, it probably was the flashcart gate thing. Steve said that when he gets prototypes to test just in-house, he would drag them very carefully across the concrete steps outside.
I still do that
because I don't want a bunch of people dragging some $300 things down their street.
Don't do that.
Oh no! These are on like blank PCBs where I have like 20 of them and I need like 3 out of them.
Right. Is there any way for somebody to very carefully just add a little bit of a bevel onto this, or is it just not worth the $300?
I wouldn't mess with it. if
These are too close. The contacts are too close to
I
the
think.
edge.
I
If
think
you're
we're
really
missing-
worried about it, just do what I said. Spend $30, get another Sega Genesis, and
Yeah.
pop it in there and leave it in there.
But wait a minute.
That's-
Wait a minute. I think we're missing I think we're missing something important, especially with this ENIG thing. Okay, the ENIG thing is probably going to be good for several hundred cycles. But let's remember, ENIG is a substrate that's primarily designed to make for an excellent adhesion for soldering. So what's going to happen is even if you can cycle it 1,000 times, there are going to be certain environmental reactions to the ENIG surface and finish that you really can't prevent or do anything about. So it's not so much just about how much scratched up wear and tear is going to come on this connector after jamming in and out of my anus 500 times. It's how well or how poorly is this going to react or respond to the environment in 3 years' time, 4 years' time? Because let me tell you guys something. I have plenty of ENIG finished boards that have sat in my house with 60-degree humidity that are quite pitted now with a very caustic corrosion just because of the elements. So the cycle failure rate is one factor or component to the equation of why ENIG it could be a problem.
Well, I
I
mean,
just wanted
Zach,
to say that.
you just came up with a solution right there. Then remove the cartridge connector from a Genesis, solder this thing directly in, pin at a time, and you're good forever.
No, Bob. Sometimes I really marvel your genius.
So there were kind of a tangential question that somebody asked in the chat, and I kind of wanted to address this because I thought people were in some ways being unfair to Terra Onion. It was related to them moving to Andorra, and then all of a sudden people in the EU having to pay import duties. Now, granted, if you were expecting that they were in the EU and they did not clearly state that they were shipping from a non-EU territory, it's fine to be annoyed, but to criticize their move as like a tax avoidance thing, like, that's what companies do. They try to minimize their tax obligations so that they can offer you a product at a cheaper price. So if you're just mad that your country has import tariffs, even though you knew about them ahead of time, I don't think that's fair. Move out of the EU, I guess.
Yeah, constitutional monarchies. Sorry.
But yeah, like I did see some people rightly annoyed that maybe when they first opened up shop, they didn't clearly state, hey, we're shipping out of non-EU now. But still, complain to your governments because import duties are stupid and always terrible.
Yeah, they are.
Including here at home in the States.
Yeah, we have our own tariffs issues with the Chinese.
What are you talking
currently.
about? Tariff walls are great for the economy.
Trade wars are easy to win.
That's right.
And then there was another question that asked how me and Steve deal with customs, which is we just pay them. Although I will elaborate on that. To deal with them properly, we have found that you need to know so they publish a list, which is like basically, imagine it's got like an import code number, a description of the thing, and then the percent duty that you owe. And you can claim your thing to be whatever you want when you fill out your customs paperwork, right? You can say, oh, this is code 1234 and this is PlayStation 2 cable, even though PlayStation 2 cable is not 1234, but they can come in and correct it and say, no, PlayStation 2 cables are not 1234, they're 4567. So what you have to do is be very careful about what you put in that description. We found when we initially imported some of our product, we had kind of just listed, like, let's say
The product name.
Yeah, the product name. We listed it as PlayStation 2 cable or male-to-male cable. And
Your favorite.
They reclassified, like, probably automatically into something with a higher tariff rate. And we found that we had to be very explicit with importing and state that this was a video game accessory in order to remain properly classified. We had to, like, spell out PlayStation 2 video game accessory cable. And then, since we started doing that, we were never moved into this other weird random, like, it's meant for, I don't know, transmission line cabling stuff that has a higher tariff rate. So, just something to know if you are importing anything is look up the tariff documents, see how they describe what that tariff code is, and make sure that your description includes words from that, and then you'll likely not get screwed over like we did once. So yeah, that's just the answer I wanted to give to that question.
So
somebody in the chat was asking, how do you find those codes? Well, I'm not going to speak for all the Courier websites, but I use obviously the Canada Post service to ship, and when you're filling in the customs on their online shipping service, there is a little search feature that you can use that will list up keywords on different type of tariff codes, and those tariff codes are international, right? They should be the same everywhere. So
No, they're not.
No.
Okay. So,
well, the Canada Post codes are available.
The first 6 digits are universal. Those are international. The first 6 digits, but the full code that you typically need when doing like these big batch importing things is different between each country. And if you're importing to the United States, it's called HTS. So Google HTS code, and you'll go to the U.S. government website, and you can search the HTS codes fully and get the full number, drilling down into the exact category you need. But yeah, Canada Post has their own system, like you said, and I don't know if they just do the 6 digits, because postal systems only need 6 digits, because then the destination country handles the rest.
I'm pretty sure I have a 4.2 digit.
Yep, that's it. It's a main thing in the first subcategory, but then but like if you're doing like freight from China, you're gonna need the full tariff code. If you're doing UPS or FedEx, they each have their own lookup system that drills you down into the final code for that. So sorry, I wanted to clarify that, since international shipping sucks. It's the worst thing ever.
It is a nightmare. I loathe it. Totally loathe it.
Okay, something I wanted to address real quick, because Todd said that the web page has been the same since they came out, and they mentioned Andorra. If that's true, cool. Like, you don't have any complaints from me. I am just going based on the mess of shit I saw on Twitter, so...
Right, because Twitter's totally the best place to get your info, Nick.
It's a lot better than gb.com, but that's the story.
Ouch. Someone asked also if we collect customs fee at sale. Customs is just part of our cost of doing business. It goes into how we price our product. So
right. Inflate your product
you are
price.
paying it. China's not paying the import duty. You are. But so
which brings you back to your Terra Onion.
We don't explicitly list out a custom surcharge or anything. I know some people do, but okay, cool. Yeah, there was also a question from a super chat, which happened a long time ago. I apologize, but it was just like early when we were talking about stuff. It's from Seven Kurgand, who said, "Guys, what's the first game you played in 480p? For me, I read about component inputs around 2000, and Guilty Gear X2 is the first game he ever saw in 480p."
It was definitely the original Xbox. It was definitely the original Xbox for me. I just don't remember the game.
For me, it was the Atari 7800 Pole Position 2.
I'm gonna have to say something on GameCube. It could have been like Ikaruga or something.
Now, obviously, this is in the context of a console natively outputting 480p, not emulating something on a PC, and that would be 1994 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The first time I had 480p capability on a console was on the Wii, and I don't remember exactly the game, but it was probably Wii Sports that I first tried when I first plugged in the Wii, because I got that, within a couple of days of release in 2006. So.
I ended up scoring a Luva Aconda TV for way less than half price of the whatever shop was selling it for, and it had component video input that could do 480i, 480p, and 1080i, but not 720p. So I immediately got
That's interesting.
an Xbox and started playing it.
That's how it was back then.
So and then as a follow up, what was the first game that you would have played 1080p, if you can recall what that would be?
Gears of War for the Xbox.
Whatever was on PlayStation 3. Probably a Grand Theft Auto on PlayStation 3 or something.
Mine would probably have been Resistance on PS3. I got that on launch day too.
Which, in fairness, I don't think none of those games we mentioned actually output native 1080p. But
that's a good point. It was probably 1080i at that time.
No, it was 720p.
It was 720,
PS3
sure.
games were.
Yeah.
Ooh, so what was it?
I guess whenever you got a PS4.
I don't have a PS4.
I do, and it was the best decision I've made in years.
I still don't have one. I'll wait for the PS5.
No, man, there's so many good. Okay, anyways, let's not get off track. Let's see any good questions here.
Yeah, there were two that I saw that I felt were worth bringing up. One, Smoke Monster wanted to also mention PCB thickness as being a very important thing to worry about, not just hard gold and beveled edge.
Mm-hmm.
In reference to a flash cart from a while back that was so thick it couldn't fit it. Diggity. And so yeah, very important point.
Oh, because of SNES, right? Because SNES is thinner than everything.
I believe this.
Yeah,
was
SNES, NES, and SNES PCBs are thinner, and the TurboGrafx ones, if you're getting just a straight PCB to go into TurboGrafx, that's thicker than standard 63 mil PCBs.
Right, and that's the problem. That was the problem with the Turbo EverDrive. Was, in my opinion, that was far too thick.
Yeah, it was borderline 100 mil. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was way 400 mil off. Anyway, so yeah, the thickness has always been a problem too. Which that's easy. Get a pair of calipers and just measure.
Yeah, but if you're going like if we're talking about Mega SD or devices like that, the Genesis thickness is the standard PCB thickness, which
1.6.
Yeah, 1.6 millimeters. Since when am I the one using imperial measurements and you Americans are the ones using fucking metric measurements?
What? I got a good answer for that. I knew you were going to ask this at some point. It was go fuck yourself. Next question. I'm just kidding.
Somebody else were talking, and this is something that I've seen pop up here and there, and I constantly just blew it off because it was only little tiny one-off cases. But we're starting to see Model 2 VA4 Genesis consoles get really weird in many different scenarios. So completely stock, nothing done to them, won't work with flash carts, any flash carts. There's problems with them with the triple bypass that we can't quite trace out yet. Does anybody know anything about that maybe we just, we observed and forgot to write down or something? Because at least between the five of us, we've seen a shitload of Model 2s come across our plate.
Did you say the VA3?
VA4.
VA4. That's a GOIC, isn't it? Is that a VA4? Is that a Genesis on a chip?
I think so, but there's other GOACs that work. I mean, all the other GOACs work flawlessly with all that stuff.
I think the VA4 and the CDX share that. Do they integrate the Z80? I can't remember on the GOAC of that. Is the Z80 integrated on that? Or is the Z80 externalized, or is it on the ASIC?
No, it's a good question.
I know the audio is integrated because you can't do any you don't have access to the bus. That's right. You don't have access to the Z80 bus, so you really can't do any writes or reads to replace the audio with like a different FM or YM chip. So yes, The Z80 is integrated on the ASIC. I think what's happened, Bob, is with a lot of the Flash stuff. I think it's something with the way they've implemented the Z80 on there. That's what my hunch is.
Isn't the answer to this question use an emulator?
Shut up.
I wish I don't have any VA4s here. So.
Yeah, I've been screenshotting everybody that says that to me. I'm gonna make a video dedicated just to those fucks. But yeah.
Can I be in it?
Yeah, you could read them. But so maybe it's that the Model 2 VA4 was one of the first GOACs and they got it wrong, so they changed the chip revision slightly on the rest of them. Because very often I'll see like 315 5960 dash or something like that. There'll be a slight different thing
Hey,
on
Bob, a lot of people are going to hate me for this, and that's fine, but I think a VA4, the audio coming off of that thing is beautiful. I love the audio off the VA4.
Hmm.
Do you like the audio off of the Model 3 Genesis, Bob?
No, I think it's garbage. That's why I triple bypass it, and it's fucking perfect after that.
You think the mono output sounds like shit?
No, I actually think the audio sounds very good off of that. I just hate that it's mono. And also a lot of cables, when you plug them into the Genesis 3, you'll get a buzz because instead of, you have a buzz on the right line, and audio only comes out of the left. So that's technically why I hate the audio from a Genesis 3, just because of that fact. But triple bypass it, and that shit's perfect.
Okay. Well, okay. Anyways, so very good. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some questions that were in comments and stuff on previous videos we should try to hit. Has Rene determined if the SD2 SNES Pro, Mega SD, and SSDS3 are proper voltage?
those all have
those
all have level trans.
Yeah.
They all have level translators. They're fine.
Oh, so Rene, I want to ask you a quick question. We were talking about MSX flash carts, and I showed you someone showed you the Carnivore 2, which is a flash cart that I bought. And you talked about this before, but the FPGA that's employed on that thing, it can directly interface with 5-volt logic if there's a certain amount of series resistance on the bus lines or something. What were you saying that day?
So that's a Cyclone 2 FPGA that's on there. It does have, in its I/O standards, it has a PCI clamping diode that is available on the inputs and outputs.
So you just have to provide the resistor, right?
Yeah, you have to calculate, what switching frequency you're going to use and how much, slew rate you're going to accept on your signal.
Okay.
But that PCI clamping diode is only in circuit after the FPGA has been configured. Right? So at power up, it's not there.
So you got a few microseconds where you're exposing.
No, we're talking maybe like a couple of milliseconds to whatever, depending on the size of the bit stream that you're putting in there.
Okay.
It's not anything that's going to cause a fire or anything, but it is not protected during configuration at power up.
Do you think that short interval of time?
Steve, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Were you saying something, Steve? Go ahead.
Yeah, I know on Xilinx chips, there is a pin that if you tie high, everything is high Z until it gets configured. I don't know if there's a similar thing on.
Oh, that would be cool if you could make it all go high impedance, and then when it gets configured, boom, the bus comes active, and you have no trouble. That would be really cool. Thank you, Steve, for being so smart. Rene might check on that for us at some time.
Voltar,
So
are you aware? Oh, sorry, go ahead. I thought it was.
I missed the initial question because I really had to use the bathroom.
It wasn't. It doesn't matter. Voltar,
Doesn't matter.
Are you aware of a motherboard revision of the FAT PS1 that is known for being more reliable and does not have the issue where it has to be put on its side?
I've answered this a lot of times. I'll answer it again. I recommend anybody who wants a fat PS2 to get a
PS1.
V7 or PS1. Okay, anyone who wants a fat PlayStation 1, I personally recommend a 75,000 series. The 55,000 laser assembly is, for the most part, just as reliable as the 75,000. But the real difference between those two is the 75,000, in my opinion, has a much more sophisticated, has a much more sophisticated video DAC, which yields a sharper and more vibrant analog video output, especially with
7500.
RGB.
75.
Not 75,000, 7500 series.
Cool. Sweet. We're in lightning round now. So, Steve, what are the best RCA to BNC and reverse adapters? I vaguely recall Bob blabbering about something. Sorry if I'm misremembering that, Bob.
Yeah, just retrorgb.com/oscilloscope.html. I put links to everything Steve suggested. I'll just post a link in the chat now to make it easier.
Cool. Yeah, if you send me that link, I'll add it to the description of the video too. Cool. Let's see. We got the Xbox One X's vapor chamber cooling solution is fascinating from an engineering perspective, but how will future retro enthusiasts address repairs of these systems?
I don't think unless you're an HVAC technician, you can service that's a sealed system. I don't think that any mere mortal is going to be able to service those.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a different world than the one we currently deal with our retro systems.
Well, no, it's the same. It's the same exact technology or principle behind the quote-unquote heat pipes in the Dreamcast Model 1. But again, unless you know how to braze metal and you have a system that will let you repressurize that with whatever with whatever element, gaseous element they put in there, I don't know how we could ever service that in my butt.
Yeah, I mean, I just meant that, like, recapping a console like a lot of people do now. There's like a different ball game when you start getting into that.
Oh yeah, totally different. Yep. Go on.
Rene, talk about Genesis 6-button controller encoder circuits adapter options. I'm not exactly sure what that question is.
I can describe how the 6-button controller works, but I'm not sure that's going to answer the question, though. That's...
Yeah, can you just give an overview on that?
Well, so the first, Sega just kept building upon the standard of the original Master System controller, right, which only has 6 data bits available to it. Right, the start, the pause
down,
button,
left, right.
and the start is on the console.
Mhm.
So you've got up, down, left, right, and then the 2 action buttons on Master System. On the Genesis controller, the 3-button one, they added a multiplexer on 4 of the lines. So up and down stay the same, but then when you toggle the multiplexer, left and right identify that you're actually using a Genesis controller by being both 0. So because Sega presumably thought that, well, correctly so too, that you can't both press left and right at the same time, right?
That's right.
So the console can identify if that comes back as 0, both of those, that you're actually using a 3-button controller. And for the 6-button controller, just built on top of that, if you toggle, I believe it's 3 times the multiplexer, then up, down, left, and right both come back, all 4, come back as 0. So then you know that you're dealing with a 6-button controller. Then you toggle once more, and then the Z, X, and Y and the mode button come back. So you'd have to, I believe you have to go through 8 cycles altogether before you can actually read all the 6-button data.
So what was holding the mode button down actually doing?
The mode is just another button. It's like I said, when you're toggling the line enough times on a 6-button controller, eventually the data bits that represent up, down, left, right on cycle whatever number is will eventually represent Z, X, Y, and mode. So holding mode is you're assuming that the software is actually checking for the mode button. There's nothing special about that button. It's just another button.
Well, I mean, Golden Axe 2 does not work with a 6-button controller unless you hold the mode button when you start the game up.
Oh, that's
true.
interesting.
Does it check for something in its boot up code?
I don't know.
Yeah, so like my understanding was that's always putting it into the 3-button controller mode, but I was really gearing towards like what is it doing to set that?
Maybe there is a state machine internal to the controller that will prevent 6-button mode from appearing if you hold it up. I've never tested this. I only tried, the toggling.
Cool.
And this was years ago. I just referenced some of my notes on my old Google Drive, so I'd have to try it out and see if holding mode actually prevents 6-button mode from coming up. It could be the case.
And then
That
the
was
last one. Well, let me hit the
Hit the last super chat.
two super chats. Chris Broom said, "Is anyone aware of any solutions to using PS1 controllers on PS2 games locked out to only PS2 controllers?"
There is one trick. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Nick. But there is
Okay.
one trick, and it works with a very select few games. And this is a trick that I'm aware of, and the only trick that I'm aware of. If you boot a game and you want to use a PS1 controller for whatever reason, unplug the controller and plug a PlayStation 2 controller a game. Plug a PlayStation 2 controller up when you boot the game up. After the game boots, swap the PS2 controller with a PS1 controller, a DualShock controller. Some games respond to that, a lot of games don't. But that's the only trick I have. I think what happens is when the game boots and initializes, it reads in some data off the controller and it checks some registers to identify between a PlayStation 1 controller or a PlayStation 2 controller. But after you verify that it's a PlayStation 2 controller, you can plug in a PlayStation 1 controller and get some functionality, as long as you don't need like the pressure sensitive buttons and all that shit. That's all I can tell you.
What if you used like the PS1 controller to PC adapter, and then you get a USB, and then you do the USB to PS3 thing?
Steve, why do you waste my time with this? I don't know.
That
It may.
work? I
It
don't
might
know.
work.
I don't
It
know.
could be something to try.
And Ryan asked, if Voltar had released the triple bypass, what would he have named it?
The triple bypass for the Sega Genesis. If I were to do that, I would have named it the triple banger, or the triple dong, or my personal favorite, the triple schlong.
Damn, I bet triple butt plug.
Nope. No.
The
That's a little
triple
too deep.
ICUP.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Well, I think that's gonna wrap
Are we
it
done
up
with this
for us
godforsaken
tonight.
podcast?
Thanks to
Thank
the
you.
chat for helping me figure out how to solve the oscillating Steve issue.
Yeah, shout out to Dark Aries. Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, what was causing that? Are you talking about the auto sizing problem?
Yeah, so it seems to me like what's happening is Steve's
Camera's doing
feed
something?
is sending me different resolutions, and I just put in a filter that basically said keep this specific resolution, and it solved the problem. So
Steve, why is your webcam resolution changing on the fly like that?
I don't think it's his...
Windows 7 thing. I don't know. I'm the only one on Windows
It's an
7.
NDI thing.
Yeah.
I still think it's hilarious that Nick tweeted the picture of him going like this. And we were all speculating of what we were talking about, and none of us thought to think Steve's window.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to plug this one more time. It's pretty sweet. It's the Remute techno optimistic album, which
I got one too.
Yeah, Sega Genesis cartridge you can get from fine retailers anywhere. Ryan,
It is
please,
beveled.
Ryan, please spin me up a one of those codes where I get, credit every time you sell one.
Yeah, Ryan, do that for me too. I can make
Yeah.
you a lot of money.
And
And please send those controllers to me, Ryan. You're on a tight deadline.
really sweet. I just love this idea of if I ever had a party, which I wouldn't because I don't have any friends, but if I did, it would be cool to just bust out like a Genesis instead of a CD player and be like, let's listen to this electronic music album. It's also
That's
got a really...
exactly what I did when Christoph came over. Christoph stopped by when he was visiting the U.S., and I plugged this thing in and we checked it out. I think we checked it out through the triple bypass and then switched and played again through the Mega SG or something just because we're nerds.
Yeah, that's another cool aspect. You kind of get like a different album depending on which Genesis you play it on.
What if you had like a thing that took like quarters and it had this arm and it would grab like a different Genesis card and pop it in, and then if you wanted to change it, you could pay more money and then have it jam another cartridge in.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
I want to hear.
cool.
I want to hear Remute on an at games console.
Yeah.
Kill yourself, Moby.
Ears will bleed.
It's also got a really cool music video on there too to check out. So yeah, like Bob said, it is beveled, so cool. At least the copy I have is. I don't
Does
know
it have any?
I don't know if the blue PCB version is or not.
I just want to say this, and I know a lot of people may agree with this, and a lot of people may not agree with this, but Yuzo Koshiro is God's gift to mankind. I bow to his feet every day. I have a poster of him upstairs, and when you talk about the Genesis and you talk about music, you're talking about Yuzo Koshiro.
You've told me your morning routine. You get up.
I don't want to hear about it. You can just stop there. I know Zach's morning routine.
Lord and Savior Artemio first, and then Yuzo Koshiro
As do we
after.
all.
It's funny because as you know, the Mega SD allows the new ROM format, right? That has the CD quality audio, just like the MSU hacks do on the SD to SNES. And I saw someone did a I think it's called an SD Plus, right? An SD Plus ROM.
Oh, yeah.
Streets of Rage 2, so which is replacing the original music with CD quality audio. And the first comment I saw was the most appropriate comment was, why would you replace perfection?
Right. Why would you do this?
Right?
It's like, have you guys ever listened to just the soundtrack to ActRaiser, pretty much a launch title for the SNES, Super NES? Oh my Christ. Yuzo, I bow to you every day of my life, Master. I call him Master on Twitter when we tweet to each other. I always say, Master, your English is great.
Yeah,
You know?
he's really good about responding to his fan base. It's pretty cool.
He's amazing.
Somebody in the chat actually mentioned a topic which we forgot, but we can address in like 30 seconds, which is...
But he follows me, Nick. He follows me. Go ahead, Nick.
He followed me first, but that was because I bribed him with free stuff. So I am a little jealous. So all you have to do is follow me, and I will send you stuff in the mail.
It's so good. So accurate, too.
Go
ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
People wanted us to just briefly mention, and not for 15 minutes, the shipping situation with Analog. I think we all agree that it's a
That's a
comical
disaster.
way for them to undercharge for their product. Everyone's wise to that game. I don't believe anything in that shipping FAQ.
Yeah.
Not for a second. It's they want to be able to say they're under certain price points. I think we mentioned this with the Genesis, where they wanted to be under $200. I don't know. You make an awesome product, just charge appropriately for it, and
Don't
stop
be
with
slighted.
the shipping. Like,
Yeah, don't be scammy, Analog, or Chris Tapeworm, or whatever your name. Don't be fucking scammy about it. I don't give a fuck. I have no loyalties. Kevin Horton's one of my good friends, but that company, the way
I
they
just think
handle that,
ridiculous to use that to market your product as like, wow, we are well under 100, or in the case of the SG, well under 200. Like, nobody's buying that. Like, everyone looks at the final price. They don't care about your tag price.
that's right.
I don't know.
It gets them to the checkout screen.
Yeah, I guess it gets you to the checkout screen, but it got me to the checkout screen with the SG, and I was like, no way I'm paying $40 shipping.
You
for
put
this
all that
thing.
time getting to the checkout screen. You're almost there.
You're already invested. That's the trick. That's the scam. That's the sale. That's the trap. You've invested yourself 20 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes to get to this final checkout screen. Then you're going to see, oh shit, I wish I didn't live in Australia because my shipping is $89. Fuck.
Yeah.
Granted, I think the Mega SG is worth that higher price.
100%.
Sure. Absolutely.
Just charge
Absolutely.
that. And yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Anyway.
I'm proud of the way
Rant over.
I talked about it today. I probably, as always, talked too long about it, but I still stand by every freaking word I said in the podcast today.
I'm sorry, but it's scammy. I mean, it's scammy, guys.
They would
You
sell just as many units. Would they be more expensive? I mean, I think the kind of people that are buying those products don't necessarily look at whether it's $79.99 or $109.99. They'll say, "Hey, I want this thing," and they'll buy it. I mean,
Yeah, people are mentioning that this was the old way of doing business on eBay back in the day, and this was before states started getting wise to this and basically changing their laws, because now you actually do have to pay
tax escape.
tax on the shipping as well. It's not just the item price. But anyway,
right.
I think.
Hold on, somebody in the chat today said something that I wish I had said, because I could have cut 3 minutes out of my rant. Analog's identity as a luxury brand prevents them from interpreting fair criticism as anything other than people outside of their demographic complaining about a product they'll never have bought in the first place. So yeah, that's kind of, they don't care. They're just going to stick the price up. They're going to get to say that it's $179 or $189 or $79 in this point. Yeah, I like that. I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I do.
They're still gonna sell tons of them. Whatever. It's just basically a minor annoyance that makes me shake my head.
I do want to echo. Yeah, I think it's scammy. I've said that 50 times. Mr. Pete 1985. I do want to echo what he says. He says, "Retro RGB, you did ramble like you had Alzheimer's in today's video." Now, Bob, that's something you want to work on going forward.
I did that. That was the fourth take. I cut so much out of that. I didn't want to spend another minute talking about it. It was the least worst. I still stand by everything I said. There's just a couple of minutes that I could have been more efficient. But I always do the weeklies off the cuff like that because it comes across as genuine as I mean it. Whereas the few times I've tried to script the weeklies, it sounds like I'm just full of shit.
You know what? I think what was more upsetting about this is something that I think a few of us here have consistently complained about for a couple of years with Analog. But what's most unfortunate about that situation is that players in this community have just very cordially reached out to them, I know for a fact, and said, "Hey guys, can you explain or elaborate this shipping situation? Because we don't quite understand it, and it's kind of putting a bad taste in our mouths here, and we just want to make sure that we understand what exactly is happening with the advertised price and the final." They've never, to my knowledge, ever responded to any of those inquiries, and that to me was that's always been the most disappointing factor with that whole shipping scammy-ish fiasco, in my opinion.
For the record, Chris Tabor has never once directly responded to any question I've ever asked him about anything like that. Anytime I've received an email from him, they're always very professional and very polite and friendly. They're never snippy, ever. But I never get direct answers to questions about stuff like this. I get,
maybe they just don't
marketing.
Maybe they just don't respond to us or to that.
What I think, Bob, is if Chris Taper is ever going to watch this particular episode, see all our shirts, he'll address your criticism by making his own shirt that's going to be "Pay the fucking shipping."
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. If I were Chris, I would be right now up on Teespring making a "Pay the fucking shipping" shirt. That is the best.
Well, all right, boys. This was a good one. I enjoyed it. We should not do podcasts for months on end on a regular basis, and then they'll be good. And the few times we do it.
Don't kid yourself. This was a fluke.
Please, Christ. Let's just do this once every 3 months still.
So yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I'm
just kidding, guys.
Let's call it here, and I guess we'll see you guys in anywhere between 2 and 16 weeks.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for being
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Thanks for hanging around, guys. Had a good time
6 more
tonight.
weeks.
We'll see you later. Voltar.com is restocked. All the kits you've ever wanted in real time. Let's go. Let's do it.
Did he say kids?